They don't chant his name anymore. They don't replay the headers. No montage, no myth. Tony Hateley didn't fit the modern script. He rewrote his own. He wasn't grace, he was gravity. When the ball went into the air, it came down with his name on it. No flicks, no back heels, just presence. A centre forward built like a warning and treated like an accident. He didn't score goals, he imposed them. With elbows, with timing, with sheer intent. And when football evolved, when passing became religion and strength became sin, they quietly moved on without him. No ceremony, no uproar, just a silence. Subscribe if you still believe the game was built by men who didn't fit the system because they made the system flinch. He was born in Derby, 13th June 1941, a city of chimneys, iron, and unforgiving streets. There were no scouts waiting, no scholarships coming, only a ball, a battered goalpost, and a kid who looked like he'd already fought through something. Tony Hateley didn't break in through favors. He forced his way in. By 17, he signed for Notts County, a club buried in the lower divisions. No cameras, no promises, no excuses. He played like every touch was a demand, like the penalty box owed him rent. And it listened. In 131 league games, he scored 77 goals. 77. On pitches made of mud. Against defenders who didn't care about potential, only bruises. They called him raw. They called him rough. They said he was too direct, too basic, too much. But the numbers kept climbing, because Hateley wasn't trying to impress. He was trying to win. And in those Notts County years, he became something you couldn't teach. A weapon. The kind that doesn't care how it looks, only whether it lands. In 1963, Aston Villa came calling. They didn't just want a striker, they wanted a hammer. Tony Hateley arrived at Villa Park like a wrecking ball in boots. Tall, relentless, unapologetic. He didn't dance past defenders, he dragged them with him. And the goals kept falling. Header after header. Cross after cross. Game after game. He scored 68 times in just 127 appearances. Not tap-ins, not trick shots, real goals, felt goals. The kind that shook nets and silenced crowds. And when he scored 3 in one game, which happened more than once, they didn't call it a hat trick. They called it Tony the Hat. He once scored 4 in a single game against Sheffield Wednesday. Not graceful, just unstoppable. He wasn't just respected, he was feared. And not because he was violent, but because he was inevitable. At Villa, he became more than a forward. He became a pattern, a certainty. The man you built your game plan around and still couldn't stop. And for a moment, Tony Hateley wasn't just playing football. He was defining it. In 1964-65, he finished among the league's top 4 scorers. A centre forward who never stopped arriving. In 1966, Chelsea paid big. 6 figures. Expectations louder than the Stamford Bridge crowd. Tony Hateley arrived with numbers on his back and weight on his shoulders. But something was off. The system ran on finesse, on sharp angles, quick touches, patterns drawn in motion. And Hateley? He didn't move like a system, he moved like a storm. He wanted crosses. They played through the middle. He wanted battles. They played chess. In 27 league games, he scored just 6 times. Not because he vanished, but because the game around him spoke a different language. He wasn't failing. He was misread. A weapon handed to someone who didn't want to shoot. And when the critics came, and they always do, they didn't blame the tactics. They blamed the striker. But Hateley didn't protest, didn't beg for more chances. He just lowered his head, won his headers, and waited for the next train out. In 1967, the gamble was made. Bill Shankly, the builder of dynasties, signed Tony Hateley for £96,000, a club record. It wasn't a signing, it was a statement. The cop expected fury in the box. Shankly expected goals from the sky. And Hateley, he delivered in his way. He scored 28 times in 56 appearances. But the goals weren't enough. Not in Liverpool, not in that system. He didn't fit the pass and move machine. Didn't play between the lines. Didn't wait for the ball to find him, he went looking for war. The fans watched, conflicted. The press whispered. Shankly admitted, We didn't know how to play with him. And that was it. No fallout, no scandal. In 1973, he played a final season with Prescott Cable's non-league football, but the fight never left him. Just a name that drifted further from the team sheet even as the goals kept coming. Tony Hateley didn't fail at Liverpool. He just didn't belong. And when belonging is everything, performance means nothing. After Liverpool, there was no press conference, no spotlight, just movement. Tony Hateley signed for Coventry City in 1968. 17 games, 4 goals, and then he moved again. After Birmingham came a familiar return back to Notts County in 1969. 57 appearances, 32 goals. Later came shorter spells, Oldham, Bromsgrove Rovers, and a final season with Prescott Cables. No scandal, no disgrace. Just the slow erosion of noise. He kept scoring, but the goals no longer carried headlines. No one asked for interviews, no one asked questions at all. He wasn't exiled, he wasn't celebrated. He was simply passed over. The systems had changed. The tactics had changed. And football no longer needed a striker who demanded the air. So Tony Hateley walked through the final years of his career like a man still doing his job in a room that had already been emptied. Still honest, still sharp, still dangerous in the air, but quieter now, and quickly disappearing from view. While the world stopped watching him, another Hateley was rising. Mark Hateley younger, leaner, more mobile. A striker born for the modern game. The kind who could play on the shoulder, chase into space, run behind back lines instead of standing above them. He played for England, for Rangers, for AC Milan. He became what his father never had: the system for a star in the right shape at the right time. But Mark never disrespected the past. He honored it. He once said his father's grit prepared him for Italy's brutality. That the Hateley name didn't come with expectation, it came with armor. And Tony never competed. He never chased the spotlight back. He watched, quiet, proud, knowing that even if football forgot him, his name would still score goals in stadiums that once closed their gates on him. Not through nostalgia, through blood, not through statues, through footsteps. He taught me how to hold my ground, not just in football, but in life. My dad never looked for praise, he just showed up and did the job. Mark Hateley. Tony Hateley died in 2014, age 72. No minute silence across the leagues, just Villa, Liverpool and County posting black and white photos. Quiet reminders they once built a tax around him. In his final years, he lived with Alzheimer's, a cruel fade for a man whose career was built on presence. He'd scored over 200 goals, played for giants, changed games with his head alone. But when it ended, he slipped out of history like he slipped out of tactics without noise. The fans who saw him remember better. But football? Football moved on, because the game doesn't record every impact. It records what it knows how to measure. And Tony Hateley never asked to be measured. He gave what he had. He took what he was given. And when it was over, he walked away, like always. No applause, just air. He didn't fade because he failed. He faded because the blueprint changed, and men like Tony Hateley weren't written into it. He scored too many goals to be mocked, but not in the right way to be remembered. Too direct, too heavy, too visible. He didn't move between the lines. He broke through them, and in a game that began to worship invisibility, he stood out too much to survive. But there's something sacred about the players who refused to adapt, who stayed who they were even when the world changed around them. Tony Hateley didn't need a system. He needed a cross. And once it came, there was nothing subtle about what happened next. The goals are still there. The clips still exist. But the praise moved on. The game moved on. And yet, he remains. Not in marble, not in myth, but in the quiet memory of a time when presence still meant power. He didn't vanish. He was just never broadcast in the format the game prefers. Subscribe if you still believe some players weren't written out of history, they were edited out of comfort.